All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Tigard-Tualatin School Board meeting. I will call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. All right, so Dr. Uda Sanada, are there changes to the agenda?
There's no changes at this time. Thank you.
All right, so hearing that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion is made by Director Jaimes and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so with that, we'll move to student representative reports. So we have a fun and mostly new group of student representatives this evening. So first, I wanted to welcome all of you here. And typically during this time, and I know Jamie can speak to this a bit, and I know Moss, you've seen some as well, it's really just an opportunity to let the board know and the community that's listening sort of what's happening at that time at your school. And so sometimes you'd have things prepared. Sometimes it's like you're just thinking of things off the top of your head. Sometimes there's not a lot to report, and that's okay too. So don't feel like you need to have this laundry list of things prepared in advance, right? And it's really just an opportunity for you to let us know sort of at like the pulse of what we're all here doing is working for you guys. And so it's an opportunity for us to know what's going on. And so with that being said, and also if there's activities, if there are, whether it's plays or concerts or sports events or activity type things, you can tell us those dates and times because we will always try and go to those when we can. So for tonight, I would love for, and you can, Jamie, you can start, or whoever wants to start. I'm not going to put you on the spot just because you've been here before, but your name and your school. And if you want to share a reason why you wanted to be a student representative, that's awesome. If not, that's okay. And then if you have anything to update with us, you can share that too. All right. So you can draw straws or paper, rock, scissors to go first.
Hello, my name is Nathan Tran. I'm from Tigard High School, and a reason why I wanted to be a student representative is that one of my former classmates was also a student representative. And just being able to see her all day, I was able to ask her some questions, and I actually saw these TTSD like films on the YouTube channel, and just hearing some of the stories during the public comment, it was really interesting. And so I just wanted to see what it's like to what's behind in the district, what it's like, and get to learn in my final year of school, which is crazy. But that's kind of why I wanted to be a student representative. And for some of my student reports, I wanted to talk about some of the sports that are happening at Tigard High School. And so basically, many things are happening. I know that football has been training hard. And Tigard Cross Country, they're hosting a Tigers Night Out. It's on August 25th, a Sunday from 5 to 7:30 p.m. And it is at the Tiger Tap House, 9230 Southwest Burnham Street, where there's a silent auction, food, drinks, lots of fun things. And the auction proceeds go to Cross Country. So please attend. It'll help them fund their sport, and we would all enjoy that. And also with that, there is a Tiger Tennis Alumni Tournament that happened a few days ago, which is really fun to see some of my former classmates there as well. And there is a youth tennis camp that's actually starting today from August 12th to 15th. Just for notification too, if you have not registered for sports, the deadline is on August 19th. And if you have any questions, the athletic department is open starting today from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there's a new OSAA physical form as well.
Hi there. I am Moss Weigel. I am a junior at Tigard High School. Freshman year, I got invited to speak in front of the board, which was very scary. But I saw some of my peers up here, and I was like, oh, like, what do they do? And so I started getting curious about how the district works and how things work behind the scenes, and how how everything impacts us students, because ultimately everything that happens here impacts us. And so being able to have this position is really amazing and really fun to see what happens behind the scenes. My thing to report is the affinity leaders. We have a retreat on August 23rd from 9 to 4, I believe, to sort of don't like. Do you want to step in?
Basically, at this affinity retreat, we're gonna get together. In my opinion, it's kind of a way to really connect to all the other presidents and VPs of each affinity group, understand where they are at, and really make a game plan all together what we want to do. And especially like multicultural night, trying to plan out for that. That's a really fun event, which is off and away in the many months coming, but super fun. Little sneak peek about that, but it's basically where we get together, learn about each other, and see where we're at, make a game plan.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Agosto Jeronimo. I'm from Tigard High School. I'm a senior, and I was passionate about this position because to me, it's very important to have different types of people at the table per se. So I think I'm just very passionate about that, and would like the opportunity to do that. So thank you for the opportunity. What I'm here to report is about leadership and link crew starting to get into the school year. So leadership right now, this Friday, we'll be having our get together to start to get things starting up and running, like getting posters done to welcoming all grades, not just freshmen, also getting planning done for football games and like prom already and homecoming, because you have to get that ready as soon as possible because it does get really stressful. And then for us, for link crew, starting next week, I think we'll be having our training so we can welcome freshmen in and training just to show them where the classroom is, just showing them what high school is like, specifically more at Tigard High School and our environment there. And then on Tuesday, August 27th, from it's from 9 to 12, we'll be having our Ready Set Roar, and also from 4 to 8, where freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors will come in to get to know the school, but also get their pictures done, get their schedules, and just buy things that they need, like their school IDs and stuff like that. So that's what's happening there. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Hartman. I'm a senior at Tualatin High School. I'm returning from last year, and I just really enjoyed doing this last year, and I'm grateful that you guys have me back. And for Tualatin High School, we don't really have a lot going on still. 3 weeks till school starts, but it's like fall sports have started practicing, had their first official fall practices of today. And clubs are starting to get, like the advisors are starting to get things kind of sorted out, but no main events going on for anything yet.
All right. Really quickly, because I should have said this before, what are highlights of summer before we like go full into school board meeting and school year? Like, what is one highlight from everybody? Summer highlight.
New college football 25 game coming out.
That's right.
I recently adopted 2 kitties. Yes, both boys, very small.
What are their names?
Their names are Oreo and, well, it's in Spanish, but Whiskers is bigotes in Spanish.
Yeah, so sweet.
I would say catching up on my sleep.
Fair.
I finally went to San Francisco, and it was such a fun time. I got to visit my cousin who's far away, and I got to eat a lot of delicious food. So that was what I was most excited about.
That's awesome. Very fun. Okay, I love that. And now we will go to superintendent communications. One fun thing that you did this summer.
Does the board retreat count?
Yes. No. Hopefully not.
I always love going to the coast with my family, and right before we started, we were able to spend about a week there. So it's always my place where I like to just relax and unwind and get my mind off of things. So it's a good summer so far. So good evening, Chair Irvin and Vice Chair Vice Chair Jaime and members of the board. I just want to spend my time with my remarks just talking about how my entry plan has gone for the last 42 days now on the job. For the first 30 days, what I really try to do is just engage with community, engage with staff members, and get to know TTSD while we had some downtime. And during that time, I was able to meet with every principal and program director. So there's 18 meetings, and I got to visit 17 of the sites. And then I also got to meet with all of our cabinet members, and all in all, probably about 35 or so meetings that I had. So I learned a lot in that time meeting with folks. A couple of the big themes that I took away from those engagements were one, last year, while there were some challenges, almost everybody I spoke with is very optimistic about the year to come, and that's important. Two, people feel very committed and positive about this upcoming year. And then three, and the thing that this board and this community should hear is that people like being here. They like working for this district. And so I'm enthusiastic about the year coming up as well. And I'm just really happy that everyone so far has been welcoming and showed a lot of confidence in my leadership. Moving forward, I will really engage in doing a deep dive into our systems and trying to find ways to understand a little bit more about the district from an inside system standpoint, but also continue to engage with community members. One meeting that I had today was actually with our law enforcement partners. I met with our chiefs from King City and from Tualatin and commander from Tigard Police Department. And one, we have extraordinary leaders in this district that are very committed. They've been here for a long time and they care about students. And when we spoke today, we just instantly, we talked a little bit about things in the community, but just started talking about safety systems and how important safety systems are. Everything from what's the right way to right size what we're doing about technology in schools to what's the latest on incident response and how can we make sure that we're prepared for anything in our buildings. And so I say that because I know I've said many times that safety is important in the short amount of time that I've been here, but I really want to convey that we do have some of the best in the business helping to make sure that our kids are safe. And we look forward to strengthening our partnership with them in the spirit of student safety. And I want to give a quick shout out, one to the board, for a really good board retreat in a really warm room. But we did really good work there, and I want to thank you for the time that you committed to that in the middle of the week. And then I want to give another shout out to the cabinet team who really dug in deep on our retreat for 2 days last week. And we left feeling really prepared and excited about the work. So I want to thank them too. And then I want to just close by sharing this chance encounter that I had when I was leaving Art Ruckin the other day. I was doing a walk around with the principal in Art Ruckin, and it was the first day of Jumpstart Kinder, and I happened to bump into these two twins. And their names were Madison and Kobe. Now, Madison, who actually has a mask on, was so excited. She stole the show. She was telling me about all the work that they did that day, all the fun that they had, all the activities, and how excited she was to come back. And then Kobe just kept staring at my badge. And I thought he was trying to read my name. And he actually was looking at my title, and he goes, so he started sounding out. He goes, what is that? What is that? And I said, I'm a superintendent. He goes, what does that mean? And I go, well, he goes, do you work for the school district? I said, yeah, I work for the school district. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I get asked this a lot. How do I explain this to somebody who is 5? And I said, well, I work to make sure that your principal has what they need to open schools for you and that your teachers have what you need. And I also make sure that I'm able to support like your bus drivers and the people that are cooking your food so you can have healthy meals so you can be ready to learn. And he just stared at me and said, that's a pretty big job. That's like the most profound thing I've heard a 5-year-old say. And I said, it is a big job, but it's my job and I'm really happy to have it. So last thing I want to share is we do have all staff kickoff on the 28th, and we really encourage the board to attend. And we'll give you more details about that, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anyone want to go first for board updates?
I just want to echo what was said about the board retreat. It was amazing. Thank you, everybody that attended, and it was a chance for us to set our priorities and get in line with our thinking. And I think that that time is precious for all of us and very valuable. kind of helps us build community within the board and get to know each other better. So I really appreciated that time. Then what was it? This weekend I attended virtually the OSBA Members of Color Caucus, and we had a really good meeting. We set some priorities for the upcoming year, and hoping to try and talk OSBA to give us more money for more scholarships, meaning that those scholarships go to our members of color that are unable to attend conferences. And so those help our members of color attend those conferences and get ideas from other board members that are in different areas, right? And so that's why those are important. And so we're doing our best to advocate for more money for more scholarships. Oh.
I'm going to go next. The retreat was really wonderful, and I think it's easy for us, and I think especially like the last year, there was a lot happening, and we sort of forget we are humans with all these other things that we're doing that are also very cool. And so it was just a nice time to kind of re-engage with each other on that level and learn our favorite pet peeves or that bucket list item or some of those things that just kind of restores the like we are also people besides like with each other and can have those relationships with each other. So that was very meaningful, and I think it got us on a really good footing for this next year. And I also wanted to kind of add on to what you were saying as part of the Oregon School Board Association and the Legislative Policy Committee. We are really ramping up. It's already been starting, but as the broader committee to do a lot of that lobbying for the state school fund. And so both Director Zerschmied and myself will be updating the board and the community when we have updates and news around that stuff. And then finally, I did want to just make mention, there was, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here, some of you may have seen an article in the Oregonian, and I just wanted to, on behalf of the board, just kind of make our brief statement, which is simply the district does not comment, or the board, on pending litigation and assures the community that TTSD is committed to the safety of every student in our schools, and particularly for the board's work. Allegations of sexual assault are serious, and Oregon law and district policy require the investigation of such reports. TTSD responds urgently with support for students experiencing any form of violence. The district is committed wholeheartedly to holding anyone accountable who is responsible for serious criminal offenses. So I just wanted to put that out there so that was really clear. Other than that, I'm excited for this upcoming year. I'm excited for the all-staff cook-off. Maybe there's a cook-off. Kickoff. No food, probably. And I think that's all I have. Director Miles or Weston, any updates?
I'll also just reflect that I think that at our board retreat, we got a lot of work done in a pretty short period of time. It was really nice to have that combination of getting to know folks on a personal level, really reflecting on a very busy year that we had last year and giving ourselves some grace that it was an incredibly busy year, and then getting a lot of work done. I attend a lot of board retreats, and ours was relatively short, and still we got a lot done. And I appreciated the engagement of both our superintendent and our board in a really great environment, and that was really nice to be a part of. I also went to the OSBA Summer Board Conference over the weekend. I won't give qualitative remarks on that because I worked at it, but it was nice to be involved, and just really looking forward to the start of the year.
Thank you. Director Weston?
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate the remarks from Dr. Udo Sanada on safety in our schools, and also the care of looking over our systems and keeping those running. And I also want to thank Board Chair Irving for those remarks on behalf of the board. I also just want to say that I take our duty to protect and care for all of our students seriously, and my heart goes out to all those impacted. And I also want to mention that I'm just really pleased to welcome our student representatives this year. And I'm happy to be getting ready for hopefully a really productive school year. Thank you.
And before we move on, we did have a birthday on July 18th. Yes, what we get to celebrate now. So happy, a little bit late birthday. We have treats, always fun.
The sweets that are behind me. Oh, I'm willing to celebrate my birthday again and relive that.
There is your special.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right?
Yeah, thank you.
And Patty, I just wanted to confirm there's no public comment. Okay, there's none. All right, and with that, we will move to our first item under reports and discussion, which is the first reading of our 2024-25 board operating agreements. And this is something that we did go over during our time at the retreat. And I highlighted, we had a few changes. I highlighted the things that we added. One of them, we sort of combined two of them together. So all of those are highlighted. Before I do kind of the final version, I will make sure all the grammar edits are done. But in terms of content, I just wanted to see if there were comments or additional changes. Dr. Weston?
Thank you so much for bringing that for our discussion today. So first I want to start off by saying I think it's really ideal if we all are fully in support of the board agreements. But I would, of course, follow those agreements if it ends up not being a unanimous vote. But I would prefer to all be fully aligned. And I want to bring up the area about the board chair making statements on behalf of the board. And I think that that's a recommendation from OSBA, and it can really help things be more expeditious. But given I don't have no idea what this school year brings, and although I think we're generally all really in alignment, I'm not really comfortable with, especially on more political issues, having that have it being spoken for in that way. And then I think logistically it's a little bit challenging. For example, we might have a State of the City address invitation come out to all board members, and so just logistically, obviously we would all be responding to that separately. There's also the matter of just simple kind of politeness of like, I would just prefer to be able to respond and say, you know, thank you for your comment or whatnot. And so I feel like I'm just not really comfortable with that as written for those reasons.
Okay, do you have, so part of the board responding is part of policy as well, so we would need to look, because that's in policy that we looked at during the retreat, so we can kind of, I'm happy to go back and take a look at that with you, and we can kind of see if there's something that is more comfortable. Do you have a suggestion for number 14? Because I know we talked about this a lot at the retreat in terms of the differences. It's fine to give those responses, like, thanks so much for your email. What I think the point of this is that anybody that is sending an email to the group isn't necessarily getting 5 different responses or 5 different pieces of information. So it just keeps, and that's where we added the making sure that you're CC'd. So you know, you could always say something additional, but do you have a suggestion that would be better?
I think there's a couple ways that could be potentially handled that I would be more in support of. One would be to make it where it might say generally the board chair takes primary responsibility for responding. It could also say something like when pertaining to information. So for example, if somebody, I'm going to just pick a very random example, like if somebody asks the entire board what the date is for the start of the school year, we had a lot of questions about that at one point, for example. It wouldn't make sense for us to all respond because it's informational. But if someone says, what is your stance on XYZ, then there's no way for the board chair to know what everyone's thoughts are. And so I think a distinction between facts and our actual more preferences might be helpful from my perspective.
I will. Are you okay with me taking a stab at that, and then I can send it out to everybody because it was just the first read before the second read?
Sure, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
As far as the chair speaking for folks, we need to be mindful of policy BCB, and that's the last section of it, which talks about the board or district spokesperson. It says the board may appoint one of its members, usually the chair, or another person to make authorized statements to the public or to the media when the board deems that under the circumstances the district's position should be articulated by a single voice. So we wouldn't be able to change that to anything that contradicts that, or else we'd be changing policy on top of that.
Could we just add just adding sort of that agreement that like per alignment with policy BCB?
I could be wrong, but I believe that policy is, to me, it reads as though it's more indicating that if we discuss something and voted on a statement, then the board chair would deliver that message, which would make sense because then that's on behalf of the board. So if a statement is discussed and voted on and it passes by any margin, then the board chair would express that statement. But what my concern is more if there's no discussion about a statement, our board chair would then, according to this current way it's written, could just write a statement and then that wouldn't have been discussed and voted on. But if it's just informational, then I think that's different. So that's kind of, I'm not sure. I think it could also read something along those lines, like if there's a policy or statement, then the board chair would deliver that. For example, like who's going to read it? Definitely our board chair.
Right, or sometimes it'll go out to the media. So these are like, and I think a lot of these kind of more pertains to when it's timely, right? Like something has to go out immediately. There may not be time to get everybody's like a vote per se, but I'll look at the policy and bring something back and see if that works.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Then the next one, and I did update this with the spreadsheet or the list in there, but is the board committee assignments. And so what you'll first see is that as of right now, for the most part, everybody just has 2. I know everybody is incredibly busy. And we also kind of talked about at the board retreat, you know, there might be other ways for that information to get to us as board members besides having maybe 2 people on that committee. So this is what I have as of now based on the Google Forms. So I just wanted everybody to take a look. And if there's a committee that you want to add in addition to what you have that doesn't already have 2 people, certainly we can add that. Otherwise, we'll move it into the second read. Does that look good to everybody? And I did check with Director Zerschmied, and she's good as well. All right. With that, it is the first read of the superintendent goals.
Outstanding. Do we have slides ready to go? Thank you. So at the board retreat, we discussed my goals for the year. As most people know, the superintendent is evaluated once a year on their performance, and the areas of focus are normally outlined by the board, and with me providing some input on it as well. And so what I'll do is I'll just walk you through the focus areas for my goals this year, and these will be used as criteria for my evaluation. I think it's important to note that, you go to the next slide, please, Gustavo. Thank you. So my goals this year will really focus on 2 very specific areas. One is relationship building and community engagement, and that's something I already discussed a little bit earlier today as a priority. And then the second area is identifying and communicating a district focus. And so what's important for people to be aware of is just because I'm focusing on these two things as a primary area, that doesn't mean all the other things that fall under the purview of the superintendent won't happen, right? So we're still very much going to prioritize some pressing matters that are coming up this year related to the levy, related to the bond, making sure our budget's squared away. We still are going to take care of operations and everything else that we need to do to make sure that kids can learn and access their education. But the board in their recruit and hire process during the superintendent search very clearly articulated that focusing on rebuilding relationships after a somewhat bumpy year was something that's been expressed as a very important, not only by the board, but also by the community. And it's something that I'm really interested in engaging with, and I'm prepared for that job. And then identifying and communicating a district focus is something that we also will do. And it's something that we'll do collaboratively, and it'll be a process that we'll lead. And so what I'll do in the next few slides is just outline what this actually looks like and try to provide some context for what you can expect me to do this year. Next slide, please. So when it comes to building a district culture and community relations and focusing on the district culture and community relations, here's the 5 areas that I'm really going to focus on. One is relationship building. And relationships doesn't mean you're just being nice to people all the time. Relationships mean that you have good communication and you're being honest with people and you're being a listener, right? So relationship building, being accessible, being visible, right? Effective communications, making sure that we have systems where we're able to deliver important information to people when they need it, how they need it, and where they need it, and in the right time, right? And also having really great communication in our district should feel like you have a good relationship, or having good communication should feel like you have a good relationship with the district. And so it should be reciprocal. So focusing on that too. And we'll achieve that through newsletters. We'll achieve that through very consistent communication to families, to the board, to our administrators, to our teachers. Staff engagement initiatives. So making sure that we're bringing our staff, we're being thoughtful about the way we are engaging with staff. We're intentionally having conversations. Making sure that we're accessible and we're having their voice elevated in the district. And then promoting a positive district and school culture. Again, are we listening to the needs of the students, staff, and overall community, and making sure that we are being adaptable in how we are operating our schools? And then community engagement. And that's everything from holding town hall meetings, community engagement events about everything from the budget to what are some of the goals that we're hoping to achieve in our school district and being part of that goal setting process. All right, next slide. And so here's just a little bit more context about some of the action items you can hope to see. Again, engaging the community, getting out and about, being visible, being accessible, and being consistent in those things as well. Even when things get busy, it's easy to get away from some of the things we set out to do. School visits, making sure I'm getting into schools. I love getting into schools, so that shouldn't be too hard for me. And then some people might be like, oh, he's here again. But I really do want to get into schools and then also be at community events, whether that's an open house, cultural fairs at schools, or just a sporting event. I love being at events, and so making sure I'm visible there as well. And then maintenance of community partnerships. And that means working with our CBOs and working with our local legislatives and working with like our law enforcement to ensure that we have really strong partnerships, because when we work together, we operate together and we do things better for students. And then communication through newsletters and social medias, like I mentioned earlier, just leveraging every medium we can to make sure that even though I can't be everywhere, that you have representation in the district, and you also know where to go when you have a concern or want to say something positive about the district. Let's move on to the goal 2, please. So this one's more process centered. It's on what is the steps that we're going to take to establish a focused vision. And this one is about getting buy-in. It's about being very clear. It's about being inclusive and being collaborative with our staff and with our community members about where we want to go as a district. Now, this could take the shape of many different things. We could develop a focus area that's very academic, or we could take on a focus area that's very aspirational for what we hope to happen for students, and then develop a plan to really roadmap that out so that it becomes a reality. So there's an implementation process as well. And again, a way that we're going to try to accomplish this is through stakeholder engagement, collaborative vision development, alignment with district goals, and communicating this vision and giving frequent and very transparent updates on like how we're accomplishing this. Next slide, please. And so again, this isn't the goal for this year is just to run through our process with staff and with community to have a clearly articulated vision. And then the next step is really cultivating what the plan for that will be and implementing that plan. And so that's almost like a 2-year goal. If we can do it sooner, that would be great. But in general, if we do this thoughtfully, we anticipate it could take up to 2 years. And then after that, it's about monitoring and evaluating and making sure that we have a system that we're using data. And the data could be quantitative data, but it could also be qualitative data. But we have measures to see if we're hitting the mark. And then doing that for a couple of years before we get to about a 5-year cycle where we evaluate, were we able to achieve what we set out to do, and what kind of revisions do we need to make. So this is the 2-year scope and sequence, or the 5-year scope and sequence for what not only developing a vision or a focus area, but also seeing what the outcomes will be for that. So that's the 2 areas that we're going to focus on. Next slide, please. All right, so what are some next steps that we're going to take? Well, a lot of these things are already in motion right now, but we're going to continue school and community engagement, start to dive into systems and do systems and data analysis, and then also really start planning out our community engagement sessions and working with our community communications team on getting those things in the books. And when we do that, we'll notify you, and we'd love to see you out there. Any questions for me?
I don't have questions. I want to thank you for all of the thought that got put into this. I want to say especially to the community that looking at sort of the 5-year long range look at this, it can look like, oh, implementation doesn't happen until year 3 or something like that. There is an enormous amount of work that is done in those first 2 years, and an enormous amount of feedback and turnaround and product that actually comes out of planning and implementation, and that's where the good work is. And then it is best practice to do that implementing and adjusting and adjusting and adjusting and not starting over again and again and again. And so I just want to acknowledge that it is not like if you're waiting, it is not like waiting. It is not waiting for a couple of years to see what happens. There is a huge amount of work that is done when you're being really thoughtful and intentional about where you're going. And so those next 2 years where you're planning and gathering data and getting community feedback and getting staff feedback, that's a huge chunk of work and vitally important to where the district is going and gathering that kind of information. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Miles. And something to add to that is that what I presented is kind of like a curriculum adoption process, right? Where it's one thing just to land on a curriculum, and then you got to do the rollout, and then you got to see what type of progress your students are making in that space. And I'll quote probably an overused quote right now, but I think it's appropriate this time. If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together.
Director Weston?
Thank you. So I just want to say I really appreciate Dr. Udo Sanada's focus on honesty and communication. And I also just want to say I know when a new leader comes in, sometimes not everyone has confidence yet in that leader, but I really want to ask the community to also focus on building new connections and being open-minded. And I just want to say, let's see what we can do here in our district. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add, and very similar to Director Miles' point, that efficacy is really critical. And so we often talk about that at the school sort of building level when you're kind of doing curriculum or you're doing a new reading program or some sort of instructional design, but really district-wide it requires that too. And those are the parts that slow and steady really does sort of win that race with efficacy. Everybody needs to be kind of like be on the same page and be doing those same things and understanding and have time to process the why. And I think what you've outlined really well is, yes, all these other things, just like Kobe said, that's a lot, right? You're doing all of these things, but also it's an also and you're doing all those things and you have this really clear focus on a couple of really important things that the community, the teachers, the administrators, really, the kids really said that they wanted to see, which is some relationship building and just, again, that sort of focus in terms of what we really want to get clear on this year. And so I think all of that, slow is good. And I think sometimes as educators or people that care a lot about what they do, we want to go really fast. And I think your sort of just sort of presence of sort of saying like, we've got time, like we're going to do this and we're going to implement things together. We'll see really wonderful results from that. So I appreciate that. All right. With that, we will move to first reading of the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook with Director Kitch. And Director Fields.
Good evening, Board. Can you hear me? Good evening, Board and student representatives. Director Fields and I are here to share with you the 2024-25 Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. We have a slide to guide a little bit of background context information and then an opportunity for you to ask questions. So as many of you know, this is a culmination of almost 2 years worth of work. Started with Tim Gross, who talked about wanting to update the student rights and responsibilities to include more current information and reflect our values, as well as he was really the person behind putting the EASH into the discipline framework. So adding in education and healing and accountability into that framework. And then as we moved on into this last year, it was going to be a 2-year project. And we, as you know, we moved that timeline forward and had the framework approved by all of you this last winter. Like we talked about back in the winter, Kelly Shelton led a group of a Student Rights and Responsibilities Advisory Committee, and that was about 21 different staff members from district office personnel as well as building administration. So what you see today, the new version, is a culmination of all the work that they have done to update the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. So before we can go to the next slide, Gustavo. But I want to take a moment just to acknowledge the people behind the scenes. We're here as spokespeople. We know a lot about what's going on with it, but Kelly Shelton is really the one and Eric Nessie, who led this work. And then Eric Nessie has worked tirelessly behind the scenes, pushing it forward, connecting people, making sure the next steps are written down. So I want to acknowledge the work he's done. And then most recently, Jennifer Greenwood, our communications consultant, has done a lot of editing and given us a lot of feedback. And then over the summer, I would say 99.9% of our administrators and confidential managers gave us feedback. And they really highlighted some important places to add clarity. So I really appreciate all the work they've done. And then Gustavo, who's over there, is working really hard right now to put it in web format for us. So a little highlight of what's been changed since you last saw it. We've reworked the table of contents, grouping things so it's easier for readers. There's other things like you had once seeing the substance violations was included in the matrix, but really it was a response. So moving that down and referring to it is at the end of the discipline framework. And then there are 7 new sections in the handbook this next year. Really wanting to highlight some of our policies that weren't in there and thinking from a family, parent lens, like what would they want to know? And does this handbook provide that information? So we tried to get all of our annual notices in there. We have one more to get in the next version, but for now, I believe we have most of our annual notices in there. Next slide. I'm going to let Gustavo show you a sneak preview of what the web version of the discipline framework will look like in real time. Since it's not open to the public and it's not ready for viewing, it's I only have a slide. So you can see how it's going to be a drop down. So you would look at the category of behavior incident, and then it has the different levels on the side. Of course, this is just one small part of the whole handbook, but it's going to be a pretty important part to some students and families. Thank you, Gustavo. So at this point in time, we feel pretty good about the content and where we're at for the 24-25 school year, especially with all the input that we've had. We still have some minor editing. We found, when you do a document like this, you're always going to find a link that isn't quite right. So there's a couple more of those. It's in the process of being translated. It'll be translated into Spanish. We'll have a web version, but you always have to have a PDF version too. We want to be able to hand it to a family, make sure that it's accessible. We're in the process of making our plan for distribution to both families and students. They'll get it, you'll see in newsletters. Students will have it on their iPads. And then classroom teachers will provide age-appropriate lessons. So those will be adapted by elementary, middle, and high school. So they won't get the whole handbook. And we can talk about that in a minute. And then, as we discussed, every year we're going to have a committee that will reconvene and gather feedback, review, and revise. So that gets us to the next slide. Because when you do a big project like that, you always think of the next thing that we could do and improve and do better. And so those conversations have already started. So we've started taking the feedback that we got and we said, what could we change this year? And what goes on the list for the next version? So the way I'm thinking about it is the last 2 years have really been about content. And this next year is going to be really about how do we communicate. And it actually kind of goes with Dr. Udo's goals around communication. But how do we make sure that this is accessible to students and to families and to all families? There's some ideas of how do we separate out the discipline, because a lot of people think of the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook just as discipline, and have a handbook and code of conduct. Should we have an elementary version and a secondary version? So those conversations are happening. And there's also different topics, like cell phones are an important topic. There will be a work group that is working on a district guide for cell phones, and you'll hear updates. That won't necessarily be part of the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook Advisory Committee, but of course will inform what happens with the handbook. Other ideas were having emergency closures in there so parents could easily reference that, grading practices, and then, this day and age, how do we make it more visually appealing and the information more accessible to our community? And then we will revise and come back to you. Next slide. This is your opportunity to have a discussion and or ask us questions.
Director Weston?
Thank you. So I was pleased to have an opportunity to review this. I reviewed the rights and responsibilities element, and my first thoughts were that it was well written and identified some important elements, for example, covering freedom of speech, but also not infringing on the rights of others. So I thought some of those elements were thoughtful and provided some nuance into kind of how things work that was, I thought, will be really helpful. I thought the layout of the discipline framework is more clear. I'm not quite sure it does everything we really need it to do, but I'm also considering that some of the work is partly coming from how it's implemented, and what that looks like as far as communicating with students, and kind of the day-to-day use of it. So I think maybe as we go forward, we might find any adjustments that kind of day-to-day implementation is falling short on. But I did really appreciate the rights and responsibility elements, and I thought a lot of that was really thoughtful. Thank you.
Dr. Miles?
Thank you for this. I read this as a board member, then I also read it as a parent and thought, like, am I getting what I need out of this as a parent? And I did. This is really comprehensive, really thoughtful, well put together. I just have a really high level question that's at a board level. I'm just curious about the lessons that teachers would give to students about their rights and responsibilities, and just wondering if those are standardized lessons, if teachers get PD and how to do that, like just a little more information on what that looks like.
So, you all know that we are a strong PBIS district, positive behavior supports, and part of that is lessons on making sure kids are really clear about what the expectations are. And so this is one of the beginning of the year lessons that goes through specifically the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. So it explains to students what the handbook is and what it's intended for. And then it explains what does it mean to have rights. So what are your rights, and then what is the district and your teachers and your administrators responsible for doing for you to protect your rights? Like, you have the right to feel safe at school. And then it's a lot of defining of, and I highlighted some of these for you, like what is the dress code, what does harassment mean, what's discrimination, digital citizenship is going to be really big, it always is, weapons, because we don't want to catch kids after something's happened. And so, for example, weapons, that seems like an obvious one, but lookalikes can be a real problem if you have a toy gun at home, or so we want to make sure that we tell students ahead of time, no, you can't take that to school. So it's a lot about making sure students are really clear. What is bullying? How do you report if you don't feel comfortable or something has happened to you? How do you report? There's a Safe Oregon slide in there. And then where can you find this information? And again, it's different for elementary, and I can share with you the slide deck. They're not done yet, but they're in process. And so district staff, in collaboration with some of our administrators, make those slide decks, and then so they are standard across the district.
So I would just add that I know this has been a tremendous amount of work, and really just so much gratitude for you both and the committee and Eric and Kelly and everyone involved. That this is years of work, and so I know that's been a really heavy lift, and then it was sped up last year, and so I really appreciate doing all of this and doing it with equity in mind, with PBIS in mind, with everyone that's sort of in our care in mind, and also similar to sort of district goals, that ability and sort of acknowledgement and transparency around we're going to implement and then revise, and we're going to implement, like there's consistently going to be things that 10 years ago there were things that weren't in here because it wasn't a thing, cell phones being one of them. And so it's okay to acknowledge there are things that haven't come up yet that we might need to add. And so that's not that something was missing. That's not a deficit. That's not something we didn't think of. It's simply, it hasn't happened yet. And so that ability to continue to look at what's here, gather feedback from all the folks that are impacted, and then be able to revise that. I just love that as part of this process. This isn't just sort of a, one and done document. And I love the web version of that. And I know that's been something that we have wanted for a very long time. And I think that is a huge upgrade and a huge asset to all of our students and families. So just a big kudos to everyone. Director Weston.
Thank you, Chair. And I was also wondering if any of our student representatives had happened to have a chance to look at it, and if any of you had any thoughts. You don't have to.
I'll say something. I just started looking through this when you guys are talking. I love how you have the wording. Like as a student, I'm able to sort of like be able to recognize it and to actually understand it. Compared to looking at other policies, I'm like, what the heck does that mean? But the student handbook, I'm able to read it fluently and be like, oh, okay, this is what this means, which is really nice. So thank you.
And then the online thing I think was super helpful. I know you guys said that was kind of just like a rough draft, but I mean like that, like exact examples of what you have and then the like level of discipline that would require. I think that's a great thing.
I'm just going to add one piece just to the other way that we're going to be gathering feedback is admin will be calibrating around the actual implementation of the framework and the rights and responsibilities. So that is another way that we're going to be learning what's working, what's not. Something in writing doesn't always necessarily play out in practice that same way, or is there other incidents that are coming up that then need to make their way into the handbook or into the framework. So that will be another piece that we're doing consistently with admin across the year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any other final
I just want to give a kudos to the team for all the work that they put in on this throughout the summer. It's hard to get as many administrators as we did, 20 something, to sit down and do deep reading in the summer on this when it's supposed to be their downtime, but they did. So thank you to them, and thank you to Director Kinch and Director Fields for making it happen.
Thank you. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Fantastic. All right, and we have our final reports and discussion item, which is board policies and a couple ARs with Director Reed.
If you want any ammo.
All right, good evening. We have quite a few policies for you to take a look at or ask questions around. These actually were originally planned for the June 24th, and due to my absence, we were unable to go through the process to allow for you to provide feedback and commenting. So we'll try to go through these as quickly as possible. So first one, we have the EBC, Emergency Plan and First Aid. And you're going to notice that there are several EBC, EBCA. And what ended up happening was due to, the new, was it a, give me a second. Due to changes in the law, some of these ended up getting split out. So you see safety threats as separated. There was ones around communicable disease. So a lot that was under one umbrella ended up being separated out. So with that said, EBC, Emergency Plan and First Aid, this is a new policy. And so it was deleting the EBC, EBCA and separating them. This was highly recommended. Any questions in that one? All right. The next one, again, due to the separation, emergency procedures and disaster plan, that ended up being deleted. And so now we have EBCA, safety threats. Any questions? That's another new one. All right. Continuing on, we have EBCB, Emergency Procedure Drills and Instruction. So we had to adopt a policy language about using electronic communication to notify families and employees within 24 hours of a safety threat or even drill. So any questions of that? We had to update it for that language. Okay. Next one, GBEB, Communicable Diseases in Schools. So there was an update to that one that was highly recommended. And that as a district, we need to provide a written prevention orientated health service plans for students. Any questions on that one? Okay. All right, the next two are required ones. There were required updates to the policy IGBAF, special education IEP program. And so a lot of the shifts had to do with who gets to be involved, like learning specialist assistants, being involved in the crafting of the IEP. The other pieces had to do with the ability for parents to be able to review. They have certain access to their child's IEP. So there were some shifts in that. Are there any questions between actually IGBAF and AG? All right. Now, there are two ARs here that have to do with responsible use of technology and academic integrity. Those were FYIs, but I'm just going to skip over those to go to IKF. And this was a graduation requirement update regarding our offerings. This was not part of the policies that came up. This was due to some upcoming changes for graduation requirements. We're getting ahead of those expectations. And so these were why these shifts were made. Are there any questions around that? Yes.
Thank you. So the requirement is apparently changing it. So it used to say that you needed 3 credits for math, which included Algebra 1 and above. Now, in our high schools, I know we have like AGS 1, 2, 3, which is a little different because it doesn't do Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2. It's kind of like blend of algebra, geometry, etc., and then more advanced, and then more advanced. So at the same time, though, I don't like the idea of it because it reads to me like maybe it would allow 3 years of remedial math. For example, if someone was really behind and there was some kind of math to catch them up to even an AGS 1 level, then I would be concerned if 3 years of math at a lower level would satisfy the criteria, because the idea would be that you would hit a certain benchmark. So I wasn't sure if it was more because we're talking about AGS 1, 2, and 3, or if it's allowing a lower level of math, which, I mean, I want students to graduate, but I also want to make sure they're kind of getting their money's worth for their education. I know you all want your money's worth.
Yeah, so there are different types of diplomas. Which one are you referring to? There's the modified, district, regular. Which one of those?
The non-modified, I think it's pertinent to all of them, but just a standard one right at the top.
Director Weston, the Oregon State Diploma requires 3 years of Algebra 1 or higher. And so we must be in line with that requirement as well. And so that's been consistent with what the diploma requirement has been for some time.
Well, maybe I read it wrong then, because it looked like that was being deleted from our policy.
It said, I see 3 years of algebra or 3 years of math, correct?
Correct.
But we can't go outside the scope of what is required by the district, which is 3 years of Algebra 1 or higher.
Or I'm saying that it looks like 3 years of Algebra 1 or higher within our policy was deleted, but you're saying that's a state level requirement.
Correct.
Oh, so maybe the idea was just to delete it, and then the state has the requirement and we don't have to reiterate it.
Yes, we have to be compliant with the state requirements.
Okay, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and the
I
state only
appreciate it.
offers or only requires 24 credits, and we require 26 also. So we have a higher standard.
Okay, great. So the state's taking care of that for us.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. All right. And then last but not least is policy JECVA and the admission of exchange students update. And it was a very simple change, changing from the term foreign to international. That was literally the only change in that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Those look great. Thank you. All right. And with that, we'll move on to our first action item, which is Resolution 2425-02 with Director C.
I'm 0 for 2. Better luck in 2 weeks. Good evening, Board of Directors and Superintendent Udo Senada. Resolution 242502 was circulated as part of the board packet, and it pertains to a request to the board to approve a measure to put a request for renewal for the district's local operating levy in our November 5th, 2024 election. The constituents of the Tigard-Tualatin School District approved its first local operating levy in 2000 and have since renewed this local operating levy 4 times. The last assessment on our current levy will go to the tax rolls this November. So we're asking or requesting that the board put a measure on the ballot so that we can have another 5-year levy. We anticipate $12.6 million to be available for the 25-26 school year if the levy were to pass. And over the next 4 years, so 5 years total, we would estimate the levy to generate $67 million to supplement the state school fund and be available to assist with financing district operations, specifically with instructional staff. So that is Resolution 242502. Are there any questions?
No questions, but I do really just want to reiterate what you said regarding the lion's share of this money goes towards instructional staff, which I think is really important for our community, for voters to recognize. So it is, especially when we are still lobbying for more state school fund money, this has historically and will continue to be critically important to continuing to give the level of instruction and caliber of instruction with the folks that we have here. This levy is needed. And so again, this is not just sort of money that goes sort of various places. It is almost entirely towards instructional staff. Vice Chair.
And I'd just like to remind the voters and the constituents that for those of you that were upset that there was a decrease in the level of services for some of our programs, or some of our programs were on the brink of being eliminated, that this is very important for you all to show up and vote on this so that we can continue to serve our students to the best of our abilities.
Director Weston.
Thank you. I just wanted to add our state school fund, sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down. And I know it was really pushed with the last budget of being the largest state school fund in history. But unfortunately, I also spent the most I ever did on bread last year, and I didn't really make that many sandwiches. So given the rising costs and the ongoing needs of our young people, I think that sometimes we get more or less money out of our state state school fund, but this is something we can control right here at home, and our community can come together and at least control this little piece and have this pot of money going to our young people, and we'll know that and we'll have that, and then whatever comes out of Salem, I'm hopeful that it'll be truly historic and fully fund the quality of education that I know our young people really deserve. But at least this part here, we can really come together and deliver in our community.
And with that, I would entertain a motion unless there's other questions or comments.
Nope. I move that Resolution 2425-02 be hereby adopted as submitted.
I'll second that.
Motion is made by Vice Chair Jaimes and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we move to our next action item, which is Student Success Grants with Director and Dr. Munn and Director C.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I'm here today to, as you know, I have been working with our colleagues and team, and I'm just wondering if any of our writing team is online. Okay, perfect. Oh, yay. Okay. So I'm joined here with our CFO, but then also some key folks who are part of our writing team for our grants. So as you know, part of our Equity and Inclusion Department has been seeking grants to support an expansion around family engagement and connection and so forth. So I have here Casey Fernandez, who is a great partner from Teaching and Learning, supporting us in our grant writing process, and also Susan Softfield, who is our local grant writer expertise. So we're so excited to have them join us to answer any questions that might come up in this process. So we just got notice from the Oregon Department of Education Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion about our student success grants. And so we have a proposal here, and I think you've read the cover letter, and so I wanted to share that we are hoping to seek some grants to support our African American Black student success connected to some of the current realities and systems gaps that are presented in the proposal, as well as our Latino, Latinx, and Indigenous student success supports, as well as our LGBTQ+ community, and our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students as well. So in the proposal, I had offered some current realities that are impacting these specific student groups, and some proposals connected to that. You'll see there's some specific content related to serving the students, but also an expansion of supporting families as well. So I offer time and space for folks to share and ask questions, and I'm happy to answer as needed.
Any questions, comments? Well, I'll start just with, and it's actually not a, well, there is one question. With all of these grants, is some of this helping to be able to sort of backfill some of the program or partnership reductions that happened in the last budget cycle, and then in addition to that, expand those programs as well in some of these cases?
Right, so when you say, because we did have some partners that we had to either pause program for, but I actually have some news around that because of our partnerships with some of our community organizations. They have actually invested in seeding some of the cost for our program. So we were able to continue some of the program because of our partnership and connection with our community partners. And because of our relationship over time, they've actually supplemented that with their funds and grants that they've received.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
this is all then just the ability to either start or expand programming?
Yes. So we have been at a pause for some of our partnership with REAP. We've had some great successes at Fowler, and we are hoping to expand the solutions program across all 3 middle schools. So we didn't have one for Hazelbrook, so that would be a part of that proposal. And then also piloting a reflection program, which is centered around supporting students and an alternative to in-school suspension.
That's fantastic. And I know I have tasted a little bit of grant writing, and I know it is a lot of work. So I appreciate our grant writing team and everyone involved in getting all this together. I think these are fantastic proposals, and I'm excited to hear. Do we have a time frame of when submitted, like when we'll know if we were granted the?
Susan, do you want to share a little bit about that, the timeline?
August 29th, and the notification date is estimated to be somewhere around September 18th for an October 1st start.
That's fantastic. That's a good turnaround. Thank you. If there's
No questions. Thank you for. I'm always impressed by how this district constantly pursues sources of funding and support our students, and the creative ways that staff do that. It's devastating to see the current reality, and this money is so needed to support our students. And I know just, by being on the board for 1 year, how great our team is in getting funds like this and how great our grant writers are. And so I'm so happy to support the efforts in supporting these kids and looking forward to seeing those current realities go away over time as we get support from money as it is available. And that's great news that our partners were able to also step up and help support where needed. So thank you for that news too. That's great.
Yeah. I think that is a testament to our values as a district and how we partner with our community. It's been a really healthy partnership across our various community-based organizations.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I just wanted to express the importance where if we have a barrier that some of our students are experiencing, I think this funding will help remove some of those barriers, and I think this will bring in resources where we obviously need more resources, and I think it's important to make sure that all of our young people are able to really reach a high standard together, and so I think this will really help us move towards some of those. Keep moving towards some of those goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful work on this and for everybody that worked on this project. Really appreciate how, or the thought that it went into each subcategory to ensure that we are getting the most out of this money. My wondering is a lot of the proposals to use the funds is one for FTE, but the other one is to provide professional development on the awareness of the issue to I'm not sure if it's to the staff or to whom. So if you could expand on that, and then given what we know about professional development and the time constraints that we have in developing those. Giving those professional developments to staff, right? How is it that we are going to fit that into the fold, and will these professional developments be like, one-offs in terms of like going into a school and doing some development that way, or will it be to the whole staff, or how is this going to be carried out?
So one of the things, so I think that the wisdom of practice, especially around our each process and then our anti-bias work, is that one of the things that has been a really aha moment is around we have to be clear about what is it that we're trying to say here, because sometimes professional development is seen as, I think we have to be clear about what we mean, because most of the time when we talk about mitigating bias, as per ODE's conversation around, kind of a public health model, you're really talking about prevention, and then you're talking about risk reduction and awareness, and then you're talking about response. So sometimes we get into this mode of there's only one way of like learning something by either a sit, catch, and get versus being able to develop a systematic approach to like support a catchment system of what that means and what that looks like. The most important thing when we talk about the successes that, as you had shared, Director Miles, around the heartbreak of some of the current realities, a lot of it has to do with intentions that are not known and not clear, and how the impact of those intentions might make the life of a student and the life of a staff that much more difficult to be able to learn, have a sense of belonging, and so forth. And so the thought process around being able to have partners and the work that we've done around anti-bias is less of a, hey, let me talk to you about what bias is, versus let me give you some experiences that allow you to broaden your perspective. In adult learning transformation theory, we really talk about when you ask somebody to do something, oftentimes as human beings, we resist. So instead, what we do is we offer information so that people can then make that leap and that change themselves. It's the work of each person to do that. And so when we talk about professional development, it's the ability to create awareness, inform, but then also have a catchment system, because we are, as human beings, are going to either have an ouch moment or an oops moment that is going to require us to have more intentional instruction and support. So that's I think the wisdom of our collective practice around addressing bias, is to be able to set the conditions for which we can learn and grow together, but then also have an accountability system where if we do make a mistake, that we can have that education in a more concrete and valuable way, as opposed to like a whole group setting. Because in that one and done, it's not going to do it.
And that, folks, is why TTSD is on the cutting edge, because of people like them that are constantly just looking at everything that they're doing and having that wisdom of practice. So thank you so much for that. Yes, of course. Where did it go? So with that, I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School Board of Directors approve TTSD's application to OEDI for student success grants as presented.
A second.
Motion was made by Vice Chair Jaimes and seconded by Director Miles. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Yes, can't wait to hear. All right. And that concludes the regular portion of our board meeting. Does any board member need anything discussed for board member reflection time? All right. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:53 p.m.